welcome to Polybius episode number 3. My name is Henry Rollings with Hospitality Net. Welcome to this third episode of this beautiful series of Polybius, focusing on the metaverse in hospitality. Thank you, Roberto, Alex, Arul, Salman, Simona, for being here today and discuss this beautiful topic that we are handling today. What is being discussed today is the from avatar to wallet, and basically Simone put together a beautiful glossary of almost 100 industry terms, and which is going to be published on Hospitality Net. So we're looking forward to that. Over the last two episodes, we had about 800 individual people looking at these sessions, which is a great success for us. So I just wanted to thank you all for that. Thank you, Simone, for making this all possible. And I'm looking forward to this great conversation today. So I'm handing it over to you, Simone. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Henry. Thank you so much for kind words. And again, always a pleasure. It's great to be able to do that. So Hospitality Net, thank you so much for making this possible. What we wanna talk about today is basically we want to make sure that, and this is a big problem for me when it comes to the hospitality space, is that for people not coming from the metaverse industry or not coming from the Web3 industry, one of the main problems is that sometimes you read an article or you watch something on YouTube, and maybe you don't understand completely all the terms and acronyms and definitions. So what I would like to do is I would like to go to go a little deeper and explain some of these terms that they seem pretty much esoteric, in a way to most people, right? And so we published a viewpoint 2 days ago that we're going to reference in the comments of the video. And on top of that, as Henry was saying, we're working on a list of 100 definitions, and the idea is to create like the ultimate metaverse guide for quote unquote dummies, people that are entering the metaverse for the first time. And today we're doing this with my beautiful guests, and we got Alex Ratto, Head of Business Development at Volt Hill. Oh wow, that's great. And then we got Arul Prakash, founder of Book Technology, B-U-K. It's pronounced as book, but it's B-U-K. And then we got a close friend of mine, Roberto Garavaglia, probably the person that knows more about NFTs that I've met in all my life, and I've met a lot of strange people, so take it as a compliment. And publisher of an amazing book on NFTs that has recently been retranslated into Spanish, if I'm not wrong. And again, I will add the links to the comments if you want to give it a read. And then we got Salman Alawi, and is the founder of Meta Designers. So thank you so much for being with me today and taking the time to discuss with us this topic. So Alex, I will start with you. So basically I was going through your viewpoint, and it's interesting because you said something in the realm of not glossary or terms will do the job of separating the hype from the business reality of the metaverse. And this to me is pretty interesting because, again, I think that it all starts with some kind of understanding, and we're trying to, in a way, evangelize people to be more familiar with these new terms. So I would like you to expand a little on that and understand what is your take on how we could actually divide the hype from what is possible and realistic to do in the metaverse?
No problem. Hi everyone. Well, first of all, thank you, Simone, for allowing me to be here. Thank you to Henry and the Hospitality Net family. I think you will now see when I go towards my vision that is exactly what I meant that people should do in order to separate the hype from reality. Now, in my viewpoint, I was explaining how I was trying to take the user through a journey, right? I was trying to help us make memory of how life was when we first got in touch with a computer back, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago. I still remember using floppy disk, 5.5 inches, to store data, to install games. It was so rudimentary, so silly, if you want, nowadays, in retrospective. I obviously, when I started working in my professional capacity, I had to use a fax machine several times. Now people don't even know, new generations don't even know what that is. And I said it like that because if I created a list of terms about the metaverse, it would probably be the case that a lot of people expressing their views would do the same, and I didn't want to risk overlapping with everybody's definition. So I guess we're living in an exponential age. Technology is moving really, really fast, and right from the beginning, the way that I put it is that if you want to explore the metaverse, we already have challenges. We don't know how to access it. What does that involve? Do I need specific hardware? Can my computer run it? These kind of things already put people off. They don't fully understand how to access. So the way I wanted to present it and the way that we are working at Volhill is to allow brands, allow users to go step by step, little by little, dipping the toes on the metaverse, trying to find their place, the right way to show themselves. And in my view, I place the focus on accessibility. How can you access the metaverse? Do you do it through your web browser? In this case, we're using Spatial. This platform allows you to use your web browser, your mobile phone, your VR headset. So that already gives you multiple options to access. But in the end, there is one rule that, and I don't want to overtake the whole conversation, but there is one rule that is above all. If any metaverse space has a token, I think everybody should start understanding the notion of not your keys, not your crypto. Very much invoked today after all the problems that happened around FTX, the exchange that failed a month ago. So that's something, probably a very good starting point into understanding how Web3 and blockchain works, how decentralization and power into of responsibility of self-custody of funds work. And that will translate to the identity, and identity is what we take to metaverse spaces. So in the spirit of not extending myself any longer, obviously I welcome questions from the panel and for you, Simone.
Well, I will go back to that, especially probably if we have time at the very end, I will ask you a question about this FTX thing, because I think a lot of people, they don't understand what is going on. And the main problem is because they don't understand the terms. And so when they look at FTX, they think, okay, this is a crypto disaster, when it's more a question of a centralized wallet disaster to me. And but again, it's a question of nuances that we don't necessarily understand, because again, consider that most of our viewers are coming from an industry that is miles away from the metaverse. So thank you so much for that. Let me move alphabetically to Arul. And Arul, you actually quoted two terms. I will focus on one because to me that's like the key one, and I didn't want to talk about that because I know that you were the one talking about that, and that's interoperability. So can you explain, like, to somebody that never heard of the metaverse, or the only things that they know about the metaverse is what they read on generic newspaper, what interoperability means and why it is so critical to the success of the metaverse?
Sure, sure. So in a very broad way speaking, interoperability is the ability to move yourself, your profile, your knowledge, your assets across uh, different places in the metaverse, right? So the easiest way for me to explain what it is probably by an example in the real world scenario. Now, if you are if you are living in a country which has internet and it has banks, we just need to kind of, rewind ourselves probably about 50, 60 years back when there was no internet, but there were banks, right? Or everyone used to use bank. I mean, banks have been there for many centuries right now. So when internet came, interoperability first came into the financial sector, right? Now, how does interoperability translate in the financial sector is that if you're sitting in the Americas and you want to send money to the UK, you still have a common way of transferring that particular value, that asset. And that is because there were certain standard guidelines and standards that came in that the entire banking industry adopted, which actually facilitated transfer of those assets from one country to the other, which otherwise was not possible, right? So it is the same way if you move it to something like, say, internet. How is interoperability coming here is that you are having players like, say, PayPal and Venmo, or say Google OpenID, etc., who are able to carry your profile across different products and different applications, right? So you could log in into, say, a booking.com using your Google profile. You could log in into uh, a Tinder using your Google profile or so. So even though they're completely disconnected, you have the central identity of who you are, what your user ID is, and you're able to carry on that profile. And that's what Google enabled with the OpenID, that they're able to transfer that particular profile across different applications. Now, it's the same thing that's going to happen in case of metaverse as well, right? Even here, if you just rewind back about 20 years back, all in Web 1.0, when all that used to be there was standard set of web pages that people used to publish, right? Now, when I say people, it used to be actual, say, AOL used to publish or Yahoo used to publish and so on. It was not user-generated content. But as time went by, users were able to create this particular content, and now they're also able to own that particular content by saying that, this content that I am publishing on Google or on Yahoo doesn't belong to the service provider where I'm publishing it, but it actually belongs to me, which means that I can control whether it needs to be available on the site or not. Whereas, the recent scenario of how Twitter is removing certain users that they don't see as favorable, etc. Those kind of scenarios are completely avoided. And for all of these scenarios, interoperability is a super critical aspect where you're able to move yourself and your assets across the metaverse as well, right? Which means that right now, if we are in the spatial app, we have a certain persona. So you can see, the Ready Player Me profile creator that Spatial has as well is one of the mechanisms of how they're able to achieve it. Now, if you go into another metaverse platform and be able to carry the same physical appearance that you're putting here, that's one way of implementing interoperability. And that's going to be super critical for ensuring that a user has a seamless experience across the metaverse. Doesn't matter who builds it. It is not going to be, there are not going to be one metaverse, but there's going to be multiple metaverses. So you need to be able to carry yourself, your profile, and your assets that you have. That largely is the context of interoperability.
I do agree, and thank you for that. But this is from the user perspective, right? And I always say interoperability from a metaverse user's perspective is like signing up to 20 newsletter, and every time the author asks you for a new email address, right? So basically, you cannot really have one single digital identity. And that's a problem that is, companies such as Ready Player Me, and I think that's pretty much what we're using for creating our avatars here, are trying to solve. But can I ask you something more, like from a business perspective? So from in the hospitality space, for example, one of the main adoption blockers that I'm seeing is the fact that if a hotel wants to get into the metaverse, step into the metaverse, whatever that means, the first problem they need to face is the fact that if they build on spatial, for example, the same environment will not work on Decentraland, for example. So in a way, because of this lack of interoperability, they first need to pick one metaverse. And once they pick that metaverse, they probably have to stick with that metaverse. And we don't really know right now what could be the situation in 5 years. So if we pick the wrong metaverse and we basically, I don't know, invest a couple of €100 on that, we could be left with pretty much nothing. So is that another side, another angle to look at interoperability in your point of view?
More than interoperability, at least for the next 5 years or so, considering the timeline that we can predict a few things around this, metaverse and all these visual mediums are going to be different channels, right? So the question that you're asking, can take a comparative stance here is, can I focus all my energy in booking.com and not worry about Expedia or Ctrip or Traveloka? That doesn't work that way. Why? Because each of them are different channels. So if you're trying to appeal to an audience who doesn't want photorealistic metaverses, then you need to be there in that place. But if you're trying to appeal to an audience who wants photorealistic metaverse, which actually has the exact, high quality, high resolution images and visual feel of it, then you need to be in that place. So it completely depends on what sort of brand the company is. And if they do want to be in all those places, yeah, they have to be present in all those places and they have to spend the money to develop that. Now the good thing that is specifically on the interoperability is that, at least from a graphic standard, there are now standards coming wherein you create for one platform and automatically there are engines, AI-based engines that can run and convert that visual formats based on where you want to be. So for example,
that's the morphing,
like,
right?
Sorry?
You're talking about the morphing, right?
Yeah. So think of it like, I'm giving bad comparative stances here, but think of it like a Giata, right? A content provider like Giata. So it doesn't matter whether you're on booking.com or Expedia, you're able to use a single content provider who is able to provide different information to different portals based on their own standards. It's the same way you have service providers who are coming on now, specifically focused on metaverses, where you create that experience and they take care of conversion of one format to the other based on wherever the user wants to see it from. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. While you were talking, I'm taking something that I discussed the other day with Henry in Amsterdam, and I think this is a very good example of the interoperability issue that we're talking about and the need for the morphing. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to get there, because I think a lot of people probably don't understand exactly. So here it is. Okay, you can see my presentation here, right?
Yeah, this is a good example. Yeah.
So I think this is actually, to me, that's a perfect example. This is digital dogs, and they're doing basically pets in the metaverse, and they came up with this video that explained interoperability issues very, very clearly. And the first thing you see, okay, this is one metaverse, but this is another metaverse, and this is another metaverse. So even though we get to a point where we can have a standard to build on the metaverse, and this environment will work on, a bunch of different metaverses, we'll still have the problem that all of these metaverses, they have a slightly different approach when it comes to design. So you can have something that, as you were saying, is super photorealistic. And I think that is the way we're going to go when it comes to the hospitality space. I mean, the main idea of building a hotel in the metaverse is that guests can take a look at the rooms before they actually go there, right? It's not because avatars need to sleep there. But if I want to get a taste of that room, probably I don't want this like Roblox-ish kind of experience. Do you agree with that?
Definitely. I mean, that's the visual element on how do you bring interoperability on the visual element side of things, right? Apart from that, obviously you have other aspects of interoperability which comes around how do you transfer assets across different metaverses, or how do you translate business processes across different metaverses when it comes to hospitality sector and so on, right? So there are different layers of interoperability, different facets of it. But yeah, the visual element is one of the most key factors definitely that needs to be focused on.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Let's keep with, so Roberto. So Roberto, I'm not going to ask you like the question that I ask you all the time. So we're not talking about NFTs in general. I'm going to ask you something a little bit more generic, right? So what is a crypto asset?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Simone. First of all, I would like to thank you also, Asian Hospitality, for having me. So I want to answer you very quickly. And I know that your suggestion is we have people that are not tech savvy, so I try to explain in a very clear manner. So the crypto asset for me is one of most important terms just to understand what is metaverse and what can we do in the metaverse. So the crypto asset is a digital representation of the value, of a specific value, that is made unique thanks to the use of strong cryptographic one of the most important things regarding asset is that they can be traded on a DLT platform. DLT, I mean, distributed ledger technologies, of course, like blockchain instance. So crypto asset can be traded on DLT by respecting the rules of a protocol itself. I mean, if we can deploy a crypto asset onto a blockchain distributed ledger platform, we can use the native crypto asset of the blockchain just to help this trading operation. So finally, crypto asset, what can I say? They represent, let me say, the basic crypto economic unit in any metaverse. One of the most important things is in which way we can reach the interoperability between different metaverse for each crypto asset. This could be a good question, so it's not so simple to answer because we have to go in depth on what interoperability means, but I wanted to be very clear with everybody. It is possible, of course, to exchange different crypto assets that are deployed on a different DLT platform by, let me say, using a sort of wrapping operation. So in this way, we can speak about wrapped tokens. So in this way, we can wrapping this crypto asset and move them between different metaverse by reaching the interoperability that we have spoken just a few minutes. Okay.
So let me ask you something. In the travel space, right? Because again, when we talk about crypto assets, for most people, we're talking about cryptocurrencies. And if you can see like a real
It's not the
application
same.
of,
It's not the same.
yeah.
Because,
And if you want to see like a real application of crypto assets in the travel space, not necessarily only hospitality, but the travel space more in general, that is not directly related to currencies, where would you see that?
yeah. Okay. It's clear. It's clear the question. So you can we can imagine that a crypto asset is not, let me say, a sort of different Bitcoin, but it represents a specific value that can be analogical value or digital value. For instance, travel industry, we can imagine that we can have a crypto asset that represent, for instance, a specific, how can I say, a specific travel storytelling. So suppose that, for instance, your hotels, in a specific hotel, in any specific destination, and I would like to tell something about my experience that I have lived in this hotel in this specific destination. So there is a problem regarding, for instance, my reputation. There is a problem regarding the fact checking. Okay, we can resolve this by putting my storytelling, okay, by tokenizing storytelling in order to deploy an authentic, non-fungible token. In this case, we are speaking about NFT, and that NFT can represent my storytelling regarding my experience that I had in a specific destination. This is very important because I can, let me say, share my digitalized experience. I can share my NFT that can represent my experience in any reputation marketplace, for instance, just to boost, for instance, such specifications that are very far from the centrum and something like that. Okay.
Yeah, we can say you can even flex about it. And I always say, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I say, whenever I do lectures, I tend not to talk too much about social networks and, or social media advertisement. And most students come to me and they say, why you're not talking about that? I said, look, because in a few years, our wallets will be the real social media, the real social network. And because the image we want to give to the world will be given by the wallets, where you can have all your crypto assets. So, for example, there's an Eastern destination. Eastern Europe destination. I'm not going to mention it. That is giving away NFTs to all the tourists, right? Now, in that case, I don't think it's working very well because I got one, but it only runs on one wallet that it's still on beta, so it's a little problematic. But that is, I can see that this is where we're going. Like, okay, you're going to a very, like Venice, for example, in Italy, okay? That's, or Amsterdam. Think about this over-tourism kind of destination. And imagine you can have a crypto asset that actually confirm and the fact that you were there. And it can also maybe give information about your travel or your travel habits. So I can totally see that as a replacement for reputation management, reputation platforms, to a certain extent, social media presence, and so forth. So again, thank you so much, Roberto. And I know you were the perfect person to ask you this. But when you think about crypto assets, all the hotels listening to that, don't think only in terms of, okay, I'm accepting Bitcoin today, I'm accepting Ethereum tomorrow, but think about more in terms of what you can actually do in a decentralized system. And the cool thing about it, and I don't remember who said this, so maybe you can remember the quote, but somebody said that the blockchain, or anyway, DTL, substitute trust with truth. Meaning that right now, like you got an influencer in your hotel we need to trust him or her. But if all this influence would be on a decentralized system and it would be a crypto asset, we would not need to trust him or her. We will have the absolute truth of what they're doing. And that's very interesting, both in terms of what destinations can do and both in terms of possible application, for example, on loyalty programs and so forth. Okay, so if you want to know more about that, again, I will ask you to get back to our panel view, and on top of that, we're going to publish this massive PDF in a few weeks. Salman, thank you for waiting. So your point of view was great, and you touched base on several very important concept and critical concept of the metaverse. There is one in particular that I would like to discuss with you, and that is the term DAO. Now, to a lot of people that don't come from the crypto space or the Web3 space, this doesn't mean anything. Could you give us like a very easy, dummy-proof definition of what a DAO is?
Of course I can, Simon. Thank you for asking me this question. Thank you for having me. I'm going to start with telling you guys to consider the normal business that we have today, the normal organization that we look at today. Normal organizations have a board of directors, they have a chief operating officer, they have a chain of command, which in a lot of cases is centralized due to the fact that each part of this company relies on each other, and they all take orders from the board of directors, who in return influence the chief executive officer. So when we look at a DAO, what it is doing, it is there to replace this centralized sort of form in an organization. By definition, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. It runs on something called a smart contract. We're not going to go into details about what that is, but a smart contract is just a set of codes that is an if this happens, then this is executed type of code. So what happens is that there is a board of directors that is there who are all shareholders in this company. And with anything they are trying to execute or they want to execute, they write it into the smart contract, which in turn executes all of the functions of the company without there needing to be a presence of a chief executive officer and so on. And it moves everything into the chain of command as it should be. So it's basically there to remove the need for centralization in a company.
So let's put it into practice. So let's say tomorrow, all the people in this room, well, all the avatars in this room, would like to create a new company doing something interesting in the travel and crypto space. Could we create a DAO for that?
Of course we could. To have a DAO, you have to have a vision, you have to have a concept. It's just like any other business. A bunch of people collectively agree upon doing something, executing something, and the DAO is just there to execute this thing they're trying to do.
So can I ask you something? This is it's a tricky one. It's almost a political question, but yeah, I'm going to ask you anyway. You feel free not to answer if you don't want to, okay?
Sure thing.
But when it comes to travel, let's say that for many countries, and I'm not going to name any of them, but we're not perfectly represented by the tourist ministry. Let's put it like that, okay? So, for example, in some countries, and I'm not talking about my country, but you got some very bizarre ideas of what is innovation all about. For example, I still hear people talking about creating websites to fight against the dominance of Bookie.com. And to me, that's a little silly when you think about the fact that, websites are a technology that is now almost like 30 years old. And I always say, you know what? I think we could probably solve this issue by replacing part of the decisions taken at a very high level, political decisions, with decisions that come a little more from the bottom. And we could actually do that by creating some kind of destination DAO. So let's say you travel to, I don't know, a small village in the south of France, and hotels and restaurants and cafes, they need to take some kind of decision about the destination. And this could be anything from, I don't know, renovating the streets or, whatever. And do you think this could be done without somebody, human, at the top of the food chain, and just by tokenizing the decision with a DAO? And again, feel free not to answer this.
I'm going to give a brief answer to this and just say that DAOs enable democracy. DAOs allow for a cumulative community of people to make a decision that is to their best benefit without the control of anyone from above, in many ways, depending on how the voting power is exchanged between them.
Okay, that's good. I don't think I could have said it better. So thanks so much, Salman.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's do another round. So let's go back to you, Alex. So, and I know that you're not. You think that in a way, the hype from the real application will come naturally. But I think there are a few things that I can ask you when it comes to definitions. So we talk a lot about, and this is what Salman was saying about DAO to me is super important. And in the travel space, this could be like a revolution, right? But when we talk about the metaverse and when we talk about Web3, we talk a lot about decentralization in general. But every time we mention decentralization, we don't really explain what we mean with decentralization. So could you take like a few minutes to explain exactly what we mean when we're talking about decentralization or decentralized system, and being this on, decision taking or distribution or payment or whatever? Just a very easy definition of what decentralization in the web is.
Absolutely. And I love where the conversation is going. I think we could talk about hours of DAOs and how they could govern different entities in the future. So decentralization, from my perspective, means that there is no single point of authority to decide or impose something. It means that it's a collective effort from different actors to either make decisions, control things that happens in a certain environment, and this poses several questions, trying to tie it back with DAOs, right? At Vault Hill, we are creating a metaverse. Now, e-democracy, I like Roberto's point of view. DAOs enable e-democracy. Now, what will happen in a virtual world when you allow decisions to be made by the public? And how do you implement this? If you start thinking, okay, for you to be able to decentralize, you need to open certain decisions to the general public. You allow a collective decision to be taken, right? Probably, as we are talking about democracy, we go back into a majority will vote into something. Now, what happens where an actor wants to get a certain outcome, and for that collects whatever is needed for you to get voting rights, is not that different from what we live in the real world, right? When you see how political parties do lobby in order to get a certain outcome, potentially the ones who have the more money are the ones that who end up influencing decisions. Exactly the same could end up happening in the metaverse. So I love the concept of DAOs. Now we need to be very, very careful allowing the right kind of decisions to be taken by a certain community, because otherwise people with certain financial power could end up buying the tokens that are needed for voting, or could end up bringing the amount of people that are needed to vote. And that's something also very, very interesting that will probably start coming up very, very soon as we see more and more DAOs ruling in different virtual environments.
Well, let me, okay, that totally makes sense. But you're talking about somebody buying the tokens. So let's say that we got like a small, and again, let's go with the travel example, okay? So we got this small destination, and let's say for the sake of simplicity that it's 100 between hotels, restaurants, and cafes, right? And the only thing we do to create this DAO is to give one token to each player, no matter if it's like a 5-star property with 500 rooms, or if it's just a 4-room bed and breakfast. And they can all vote semi-anonymously on whatever is the main topic of the DAOs, or whatever is the main topic they're discussing about this nature. In this case, nobody will actually buy the token. The token will be yours because you actually are a player of the hospitality space in that destination. Will that change your angle in that case?
It was one of the examples. You can either buy a token or bring the amount of people that are needed to bias a decision. In this case, just to put an example, and challenges that the industry will have to face is for a tiny moment, I logged into this space first from my Oculus, from my headset, virtual reality headset, and then from my computer. So there was 2 Alexes at some point in the room. So what happens if through our wallet, you said our wallet will be our IDs, right? What happens if I create multiple wallets? How are we going to make sure that, or what are we going to implement to make sure that only one wallet will represent you and not 2 or 3? What happens if I invite Roberto and Salman and Arul now and my friends? I'm going to invite them to join this cause and make sure that they support the same cause. It is full of challenges that we will have to overcome to make sure that we can reestablish democracy or establish democracy in this nascent space.
Okay, that makes total sense. So in a way, this should probably will look like some kind of centralized centralization. So where you will have like the centralized system, but you will still have somebody looking over it. Does that make sense?
Which is pretty much what is being implemented. But obviously the dream, the utopian vision of being completely decentralized is always appealing, right? Everyone wants to give the people or the users empower them with their own decisions, right? But it is full of challenges, and these kind of hybrid structures are the ones emerging the most.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, thank you so much. That was very interesting. Okay, Arul, let me ask you something. In the hospitality space especially, whenever we talk about the metaverse, we're pretty much always referring to a digital twin. Can you tell us more about what a digital twin is, and if you know any example of digital twins that have been already implemented?
Sure, yeah. I mean, though I do believe, metaverse is much more than just a digital twin. It's just digital twin typically are like a digital representation of a real world activity that is happening, right? So think of it from a factory perspective, or from a space station perspective, or even from a hotel perspective, where you have a digital representation of the real world, of the equipments that are running, that are being operated, and what the status of them are, right? You being able to see how they are functioning and how they are operating, and being also able to control them, uh, so that your digital versions are exactly twins or replicas of real world activities or incidents that are happening, right? So that's what we typically calling as digital twin. And in fact, manufacturing sector is probably the first one where that has a lot of benefits, and NVIDIA has a specific, I believe it is NVIDIA, one of the projects. I'm just trying to think where they had called it as Omniverse, if I'm not wrong, instead of Metaverse, which was specifically focused around.
That was NVIDIA. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, yeah. So they're calling that platform as Omniverse, which is again a very, very B2B focused solution of what we're seeing as Metaverse, right? But frankly, from a personal opinion, I adhere to the principle or the guidelines, or what to say, the tenets of what Metaverse is, more from what Matthew Ball's document talks about of what it is, right? Where it has to include a certain element of economics. It has to include monetary value being generated as well. That's when Metaverse is all pervasive. And I remember, Simon, we had a conversation earlier also once about this, and my point over there was that just like today you have a physical profile, a real life personality, a profile which you have on your ID cards, from that the government issues. Then you have an online persona which comes from LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Right? Tomorrow there is going to be in addition another persona that is going to be built, which is specifically from a metaverse perspective, which is three-dimensional in nature, which has more elements to it than what a physical world or a 2D world or a online world had. And each of these are going to be entwined with each other, right? So today you cannot isolate your physical real world from a digital profile of yours, and vice versa. It's the same way we will see that uh, even when metaverse comes in, you will be gradually creating a profile for yourself, a personality for yourself, where you could you could be wearing a wacky costume and walking around, but in real world you're something else. But it kind of again connects back to the same person, right? If it makes sense. So one
Yeah.
thing is going to impact the other across all of these three channels. That's the kind of principle that I believe will work more. But yeah, a digital twin probably is a way that to make it more monetizable from an industrial perspective.
That's great. Okay. I think you clarified the point perfectly. Thank you so much. Roberto, I'm going to ask you, so we got 10 minutes to go. So let's say I ask you one question, 5 minutes, and then we go to Salman for the last question, and then we wrap this up, okay? Especially when it comes to hospitality, there's always this, I think it's an adoption blocker. I don't know how you see that. And that is the fact that some metaverses or some virtual worlds, if you want to be more academic, they actually require you to buy land, right? And for a lot of people, it is confusing when you say that whenever you're buying land on a metaverse, you're basically buying an NFT. So Roberto, this is, I think, is right on your alley. Can you explain a little better what land is in the metaverse and why land is actually an NFT?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you for these challenging questions. So we can say that a land is a sort of byte stream that can be, of course, replicated So there is a credible way to avoid the replication of these byte stream. It's by using an NFT. What I mean, if I can take this byte stream that is the land on a metaverse, and I can tokenize them, I can include this byte stream in a non-fungible tokens that is that can achieve the opportunity to not replicate the land itself. And at the same time, I can add to the land that I have just tokenized some properties right. What I mean, if I'm the owner of this land, I can tell everybody in this metaverse, but in each metaverse that I would like to show that I'm the owner, that the owner itself. Why? Because in the NFT that has tokenized the land, there is my digital signature. I mean, a cryptographic signature that can demonstrate to everybody that this land, it's up to me because I have digital signed it when I have tokenized it and when I have minted the NFT that represent the value of this land. I don't know if
so basically the NFT is doing, yeah, perfectly. So the NFT in this case is pretty much doing the notary work.
Yes, it's a sort of notary services, but once again, without the notary person itself, okay, without the need of a central authority.
Yeah,
because we are
but that's again
in a decentralized environment, okay? And it is a very important thing because, let me say, there is a problem regarding the single source of truth, okay, in a centralized environment. But we are in a decentralized environment. We are maybe in a decentralized environment that is governed by a DAO, okay, and we don't need a centralized authority, but we have to need to have some methods to grant that this NFT is up to me, that I have signed at a specific at a certain time, and this I would like to do this without the notary, of course.
That makes sense. Again, I think the best way to say that, and again, I'm not quoting this because I don't remember who said that. I probably need to Google it down. But basically, you're replacing trust with truth, and that's basically what we're doing without the need of a human intervention. Salman, I have the last one for you, and I think that's an interesting one. So let's end with a bang. So I'm 43, right? And I do remember the dot-com bubble. And over the last 6 months or so, I've read so many articles, more than skeptical about the future of the metaverse. And most of them were pretty much only referring to Zuckerberg's Meta. And the interesting thing to me was that kind of narrative was something that I remembered reading 30 years ago when journalists were trying to talk about the internet. So I just did some research work, and I found out a lot of articles from the late 90s and the early 2000s that were predicting the collapse of the internet. And these are just a few. You can see it on my screen. This is from the New York Times, and yeah, Guardian. We got this is super, like, this is amazing. Internet may be just a passing fad as millions give up on it. And but my favorite one is Nobel Prize winning Paul Krugman, when it says that by '05 or so, it will become clear that the internet impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machine. And this is coming from a Nobel Prize back in 1998. So your word to end up the conversation is probably bubble. Do you think we're on a metaverse bubble right now?
Very interesting question here, Simone. I'm only 23, but I do see a pattern where history repeats itself, but in more technological advancement every now and then. And people are going to be skeptical when they don't understand quite what the technology is yet. Concerning the future of the metaverse, it is still taking its baby steps, but in my opinion, it is inevitable. And it will come regardless of what criticism is being thrown its way and everything, because there are true builders who are looking to create value. And I think that through creating valuable solutions to very, very critical problems, the metaverse will eventually be here and be among us.
It's interesting that you use the exact same words that I used in my presentation, and that is history repeating itself? And if you take a look at this one, this is to me, it was striking me because the first one comes from an article from 1995, and it says, it's all hype. I've been on the internet. There's 12 people on there. And if you know, luckily for you, you're only 23. But a couple of weeks ago, this article came out, and the title was "It's Lonely in the Metaverse. The Centraland has only 38 daily active users." So you see, even the wording is exactly the same. You know, this to me was like shocking. And I'm thinking, who knows, maybe in 20 years, we will be looking back at these articles and go, what the hell were we thinking? So I agree with you that the metaverse is inevitable, and it will probably go through, you know, some speculation as all new technologies goes to. But yeah, at the end, I don't see any other future for the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you
also...
so much. Yeah. Sure.
Go ahead, Simon. Go ahead.
No, just at your point, that I'm going to
I just wanted to add that there is a pattern. I was just about to say that I read the same article about the metaverse, and I think there's a lot of lobbying going against decentralization and everything, but let's just not get political here.
Yeah, and that is another term that will be on our passive PDF that we're going to publish, and that is technically called FUD. But I'm not going to explain what FUD means because you need to download the PDF when it comes out, probably before the end of the year. Guys, thank you so much. This was super interesting. I know we were not able to cover all the terms, but I wanted to focus on the ones that are a little more meaningful for my industry, and that's travel and the hospitality space. Alex, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Thank you, Simone, and thank you everyone for being here. You can get in touch with me, write an email, alex.bolthill.io, or go to our website and use the contact form, bolthill.io.
Perfect. Arul?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me. Just search for Arul Prakash, followed by book, BUK, and that should be me.
Very good. And Roberto?
Oh, the very simple way is to Google Roberto Garavaglia. No, okay, I'm joking, of course. No, no. So we can check at LinkedIn, and Roberto Garavaglia, or you can check at www.closetopay.com. That is my blog, www.closetopay.com. Thank you.
Closetopay.com. Yeah, very interesting one. Very interesting read. Learned a lot about NFTs with that. So thank you for that. Salman, what is the best way to get into you?
First of all, Simon, thank you for having me, and
thank you
to Polybius and everyone at Hospitality Net. The best way to reach me is through my LinkedIn. I just left my LinkedIn handle in the comment section.
That's very good. Thank you so much, guys. Just celebrate whatever is your preferred holiday. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, you know, Sol Invictus, whatever pagan or holiday you do celebrate. Spend some time with family, friends, and close people. Thank you so much for being part of this, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. And again, thank you to Hospitality Net for founding all of this shenanigans that just came to my mind like 1 year ago in the middle of the night, and now it became reality. It's very important to me. So thank you so much, guys. Enjoy the holiday, and we'll meet again in January with the 4th episode of Polybius and the new massive guide, the glossary of the metaverse. Thank you. Bye. Ciao, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao, Simone.